a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello, so Blank Game Week is over with a splutter. Quick turnaround pod this week, starting off with Nick, just had his Tesco delivery. You all right?
Bit of background noise, I'm afraid, just now with the Tesco deliveries. Apologies for that. But yeah, it was a little bit of a damp squib, wasn't it, ultimately, with Everton being the only team that scored more than one goal this week. And of course, no one really targeted those Everton players, did they, either? So yeah, not great all in all for those free hitters. So I think end result is advantage for non-free hitters ultimately, but we'll discuss that a little bit more in the team reviews. We are, of course, Who Got the Assist. Make sure to give us a follow on social media if you don't already, and join our mini league, which the code is cpsulf. We have Anthony back as well. Like myself, I know you've been super busy with work and exams. So how are you doing?
We're still here anyway, Nick, which is the good thing. I was one of those non-free hitters, so I'm pretty content having watched basically nothing happen over the last few days in the Premier League. It was really delightful for once for that to happen.
Hey.
So yeah. Woo. Yeah. So I guess moving on towards the double game week, guys, because that's what everyone wants to do. We have a quick pod tonight, frisking through that double game week, looking at basically the questions that you guys really want answered, the likes of who should be the captain, who are the key men to have, who are the differentials. And then we've also got our usual listeners' questions as well. The correspondence section, it is on hold. It's not dead. Don't worry, guys. I know there was some concern, but it's not dead. We just, because there's such a short turnaround between this pod and the next deadline, we didn't feel like we'd be giving the valuable contributors any value for money or value for their time or value for their effort if we just stuck their correspondence into the middle of this very quick pod.
All right, let's move on to the game reviews then. As Anthony has already intimated, spoiler alert, it was not the best of game weeks. The spectacular outcome that we all were envisioning did not come to pass. And though you finished at the bottom of the pile, Anthony, you've got to be relieved, ecstatic with that your 9 men have come through and somehow stolen your green arrow by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I think it's very rare that I'd be the last of all of us and think that I've got the triumph here. It's not even a Pyrrhic victory. It's just delightful. So I got 45 points net, 49 points, and I took a hit as well, which was enough to, it seems, get me up effectively 1 point's worth of ranks to about 277k, having started on 288k. Basically, I was led by the defense. Mitchell was my highest scorer when you take away captaincy out of the consideration with 8 points. Diaz and Cancelo. Diaz came into my team for Chilwell as one of my transfers. I had Saka, who came in as one of my transfers. He didn't do too much with 3 points, but I'm glad I had him because he was pretty active in terms of just, actually having attempted contributions at least. So I was a lot more content having him in my side. De Bruyne came into my side for Salah. He was captained, unfortunately, didn't get an extra assist or even a penalty at the end of the game, but still an assist nevertheless, 12 points. Son Fernandez covered me against everyone who owned them on free hits. Brewster hit the post, in fairness, which is more than he usually does, but still 1 point, which is very much normal service. Calvert-Lewin, unfortunately injured, so didn't play. And Harry Kane, 8 points, which would have been, I guess, the best of the captaincy options as it transpired, which I guess shows just how disappointing this game week was for so many people. But overall, I guess when you take into account that the average free hitter in the top 10k got 52 points to be just 7 points behind them, I think is a pretty decent week for me. And I still have my free hit when the real difficult season comes around later with later rounds of the FA Cup clashing with fixtures.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely take that. That's a really good score considering you didn't use your chip. So yeah, I scored 7 points more than you. I got that 51 points in the end. I was, as people who listened to the last pod with Mark, I did succumb and used a free hit. And with Martinez, his Aston Villa fixture being cancelled, Calvert-Lewin having an injury, it just kind of put me in a position where I was just so short of men that it wasn't looking like it was going to be worth it. So to be honest, like the players that I brought in didn't really do a lot considering what my plans moves were. I was going to bring in De Bruyne and Diaz on a hit anyway. Got both of those in on the free hit. They got 7 and 6. So Maguire came in, did the best out of all the players I actually brought in for the free hit with his 6-pointer. But obviously he could have had a 15-pointer had that goal not been declared a foul, which was a bit of so I was a bit unfortunate there. Otherwise, Yeah, it wasn't that great. I captained Bruno. That was blank. Son blanks. Saka came in on the free hit for 3 points, and Martial and Wilson both came in on the free hit and both got 2 points. Just waste of space. Lloris came in goal. He only got 3 points. The highlight really was I guess the players that I already owned. Kay got 8, and Mitchell, because Tierney didn't play, he came off the bench for a nice 8-pointer. Really kind of saved the game week a little bit, creating a 10k green arrow up to 49k. So it's always the unlikely lads to turn up, isn't it, for me, with that Mitchell return off the bench. But I think you got that as well, Tom. You've had a pretty decent free hit all in all.
I don't know if it's decent. It's well, I've got a green arrow. I think I've got 200k green arrow because I'm still at the level of low rank that doing okay means that you do fairly well. 55 I got in the end. De Bruyne captain, got an assist. That was it. I mean, there was some evidence of elite finishing going on, namely a glaring miss, which would have been a Hunderhand assist as well, which I'm still okay about. I'm fine with that. The main star, really, for me, actually, outside of Kane and Mitchell, was Aaron Ramsdale. Got me a clean sheet, and he got me 9 points, which was quite interesting. I read earlier on that the last time Ramsdale got a clean sheet, Donald Trump was impeached too. So one of those kind of weird moments that intersects real life. But yeah, Mitchell this evening coming off the bench with 8 when Tierney was shockingly not involved, I guess was a nice sort of end to it. Never have I wanted us not to score, us being Arsenal, more than this evening. So a bit of a crap watch really to end the game week. Apart from that, I mean, every free hit I've ever done, I think, has been a bit of a shower, and this one is no different. I mean, there's not really too many things I could have done differently. I think it really is again a case of what could have been, as Nick said. A few things with De Bruyne going my way. Martial as well. I mean, he had an XG, a non-pen XG of 0.61. I think that's the third highest underachiever of the whole game week. Big one-on-one he missed at the end as well, and on top of that, Son as well. Obviously, that wouldn't done very much for me, but he was a top underachiever in terms of XG. So it could have been 70, 80 points, or really if everything had gone a little bit differently. But you don't get any points for almost, do you? Right, let's move on to the double game week heading up, and the first thing to look at, of course, is the market forces. Nick, a concise one this week. What's going on?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting with the market forces. Patrick Bamford's actually the most transferred in player, with 155,000 transfers in time of recording. I'm sure that will be subject to change by the end of the game week, but just shows the risk, I guess, of making those early transfer moves. Obviously, he's having a great season there with 10 goals, 5 assists, outperforming those expectations. But only the single game week now. So, other managers are now looking at other forwards, perhaps if you're looking at forwards like Antonio and Watkins. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, it's about the West Ham men, Stuchek and Antonio, who I just mentioned. Both have had 115,000 transfers in at time of recording. Obviously, very good picks for the next double game week with their brilliant fixtures. And then it's about Foden, actually. So Foden started the last 2 City games, got a couple goals and assists. Looks like a very interesting pick, I guess, for the double game week. But, you have to wonder whether it's going to be another false dawn with him, considering before that he'd only started 1 game in 9. So certainly one to watch. And also Kevin De Bruyne attracting a lot of attention, 90,000 transfers in for him to round up the transfers in. But yeah, otherwise, transfers out. Calvert-Lewin's obviously injured. Son, he's got a single game week. Wilson, a lot of sales for him. He did blank, but Newcastle might now have a double. So again, anyone who's done a Wilson to Bamford type move could be punished by that one. And Zaha and Neto, 2 other players with only a single game week that are rounding up the transfers out.
Looks like double game week momentum starting to gain traction in the economy. Let's move on to that double game week, and it's here finally. Lots of different iterations, lots of moving the goalpost from Leeds' double game week going to Man City's double game week being given, Aston Villa's double game week being changed, and the week has been elongated now as well. So the next game week actually goes all the way up to Saturday the 23rd. So a week-long game week in FPL. I'm not sure I can remember one being that long ever, actually. But yeah, a lot of interest, of course, because it is here. So what are we doing? How are we approaching it? Are any of you playing any chips or anything?
I'm not going to be bench boosting, but just my team's in a little bit of disarray, to be honest. Like with obviously the Leeds Southampton game being cancelled as well. I'm down to 6 double game weekers right now, so not a lot of good assets for this particular game week. I've still got front line of Kane, Calvert-Lewin, and Adams. I don't know why they're still there, those guys, especially Calvert-Lewin, who's now injured. Adams also flagged, no longer has a double game week. So I'm looking to get rid of those guys. Those are going to be the priority to move them on, probably for Watkins and probably Antonio as well, though there's question marks there still about his fitness. So very much depends if we get anything interesting out of the press conference tomorrow. I'm also possibly going to do another move. So I might take a -8 just to get more double game week players in. So I might do a defensive swap as well, using a little bit of that extra cash, probably moving someone like Walker Peters on to Diaz or someone like that at Manchester City. But it does mean that I'm going to be taking a -8 and also not owning De Bruyne. So a little bit of risk there. Perhaps we'll cover that in a little bit. With those 3 moves, I'm going to be in a position with 9 double game weekers and then Son and Kane. So puts me with a relatively decent squad at least.
Are you going to do chip though?
No chips.
I don't think I'll be using any chips either. I'm not too enthused by the triple cap options. I haven't really planned all that carefully for this double game week with a view to trying to get a bench boost together, and I certainly don't have a bench worth talking about at the moment, with Brewster and injured Calvert-Lewin and Mitchell kind of being the 3 players that will be benched in my current format. So with that in mind, I think it'll be just transfers, maybe a single hit to settle me up for this, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, I'm similar to Nick actually. I think I'll be taking a -8 of some sort, but I'm undecided about chips at the moment. I think we'll come on to them in a little bit. But the first thing to talk about, I guess, is captains. Whether we're going to be triple captaining or not. Obviously, the biggest decision this week is where the armband's going to go. A good question to start us with is Adam Pritchard, who asks if going without KDB is crazy, stupid, ignorant, or dumb. I'm assuming he means by that he can go without and wants some reassurance that it probably is going to be okay. I suspect that for most people, Kevin De Bruyne is the de facto captain, with Crystal Palace and Aston Villa both be a pair of home games there. And I suspect he's going to be most people's captain, isn't he? Anthony, you've got De Bruyne. Are you looking to give him the armband?
Yeah, I do indeed have De Bruyne, and I guess if you were to look at the fixtures just simply on paper, you'd have to say that City's fixtures are the best of them. Now, City's performance the other day would definitely give you, I guess, at least cause to pause with that decision, and I'm not quite sure precisely what I'll do. However, I, just as a blocking tactic, if anything, am currently leaning towards captaining De Bruyne. Now, I'm considering a fairly radical overhaul of my side, which would include a hit, which would then bring Salah into my side to replace Son. I know that's kind of mad when he's playing away to Sheffield United, but that's what I am considering. If Salah is in my side, I think the decision becomes an awful lot harder. But when it's De Bruyne versus Bruno Fernandes, who has a game against Liverpool, I'm just in not as big of a rush, I guess. And I wouldn't be captaining one of the single game weekers, even if Sheffield is a decent enough fixture for Spurs, just because Spurs are playing so carefully right now. Jamie Vardy is someone who's on my radar, but I just don't think I'll be able to get him in. He'd be an interesting captaincy pick, I think, if you were able to get him into your side, just based on those fixtures that Leicester have. Southampton with that known high line, I think that it would suit him. And Chelsea, Vardy has a knack against top sides anyway, and this is one of those things that's continued to play out over and over again. And Chelsea's defense definitely hasn't been as strong as it was for a certain few weeks earlier in this season.
I did look at Vardy because I've got him. I think his non-pen XG is at 1.8 or something over the last 6 games. But it would be very Vardy, wouldn't it, for him to come through over those sort of a couple of home fixtures. But I do think De Bruyne is probably the one shock horror. He does have a bit of best fixtures, as I've noted. As I did kind of intimate earlier, I'm not buying this idea that he's an elite finisher, at least not this year. He's simply not. I'm hardly somebody who's standing on the sideline shouting that stats are bad, watch the game, mate. But the myth that KDB is this predator in the box is simply untrue, at least this season, if you watch the games. He scored 1 goal from open play, which is a tapping from a rebound. He's missed 6 big chances. That's the second midfielders. And he's frankly the guy who'd rather be passing rather than shooting. He's a deluxe Jack Grealish at this point. But he is fourth for non-pen XG over the last 6. He is second for chances created and top for big chances created. That's for Jack Grealish as well. And he also should have penalties back after Sterling's aberration. And his assist potential, of course, is legendary. So grounding expectations this week in double game week, 2 home games, 2 assists and a penalty goal is perfectly reasonable as an expectation versus Crystal Palace and Aston Villa. And I think that would represent a captaincy haul I'm perfectly happy with. So I think that given how things are looking, that would be where I go. I think Bruno's 4 yellow cards makes him uncaptainable. If you get a yellow card versus Liverpool, you've basically lost your second game. But Salah's home double, that's the other one I'm interested in. There was a really interesting stat I saw in The Athletic that his non-pen XG has fallen off from 0.5 MP XG per game over the last 3 seasons to 0.33 now, 0.34 I think it was actually. And astonishingly, this is a big one for him, he's failed to have a shot in the 6-yard box in the whole of the 2021 season. TC, not too sure whether I'll put it on De Bruyne this week. I might well do, because, as I said, 1 goal and 2 assists would be my expectation over the next 2 games. Would I like that from triple captain? I would. I mean, surely City are going to administer this spanking every now and again. But Nick, it sounds like you're going to be dodging Kevin De Bruyne. So what are you going to be doing with your captaincy armband?
It's not a scenario that I really want to be in for this game week. It's just I've got so many other issues to deal with, and there's just no way that I can actually get De Bruyne into my team without starting to look at almost like -12s, -16s. It's not feasible, and also looking to probably sell Kane and Son to try and bring him in, because even people talking about Son to KDB, that would still be 2.1 million that I'd have to pull out of a hat somewhere just to get this guy in. So I'm gonna ignore all the stats. I'm not going to think about it too much. And just hope I can get away with not only De Bruyne. I mean, as you said, Crystal Palace and Aston Villa, it looks good on paper, certainly, but both those teams have been relatively decent defensively this season. As Palace, have had, got smashed that one week against Liverpool, but otherwise, last couple of games they've looked pretty solid, especially with Mitchell back in the side doing his business at left back. So, yeah. I think De Bruyne obviously probably is the standout captain's pick. I'm not gonna try and make a case as to why he isn't, but I think because I don't own him, it's probably gonna have to go on Salah for me for this week. I think he's probably just pegs it between him and Bruno in terms of the second choice.
Just an interesting one on Crystal Palace, because I guess they have got 2 clean sheets in their last 4, which would make you maybe more confident in their defence than you would have been after the Liverpool game, on paper at least. But when you look at the underlying stats, Crystal Palace's defence in the 4 games since that hockeying has actually been the second worst in terms of, let's say, shots conceded in the box, 35, only Brighton with more shots conceded in the box. And it's the same as well in XGC, which 7.11 is only just a little less than 7.12 that Newcastle have. So have Crystal Palace's defence been flattering to deceive, and are they actually well teed up for Man City to deliver a spanking, or are they tighter than their stats actually would suggest? That's maybe the question that you need to ask yourself as well when you're thinking about, especially triple captaining De Bruyne, but captaining him as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying about that for so long, haven't we? Oh, it's going to come for De Bruyne. He's got these underlying stats which he hasn't yet expressed in terms of FPL points. If it is a game prediction and you're kind of saying, right, these are eventually going to show, you're going to think the next 2 home games are going to be the ones for that. Slight caveat that Pep has said, he looked really knack at the end of the last game. That's why he gave Sterling the penalty, because he couldn't kick a ball. I don't really know why he said that he was so tired, so Sterling had to take the penalty. He didn't quite get that one. Obviously, I'm pretty sure it won't happen, but there could be a chance that he may be given some limited minutes, shall we say.
Pep will be over to him with matchsticks to keep his eyelids parted next match. If
the pinker he gets, the more likely he is to be subbed off. But yeah, it sounds like 2 De Bruyne's and 1 Salah default. Excellent. So let's move on to the key men then. I'm sure a lot of these players are in place already for a lot of people. A good question on this was from the FPL Sergeant, who asked if the likes of Villa and City players are the best to bring in, as they've got the double whammy of double game week 19 and 2 fixtures in hand, so sorts of players who are going to sustain you over the next kind of little period. Let's start off with the Man City defence. So we've kind of covered De Bruyne. Their defence is just exemplary, really. I look at the data earlier, and it's fairly mind-blowing. So over the last 6, they've got the lowest XGC, 2.83, just under 2 fewer expected concession than whoever's second from bottom, which is Liverpool. They've conceded just 9 shots on target and just 3 big chances in the last 6, which is 1.5 shots on target and 0.5 big chances per game. So normally with City, since every season with the likes of Edison, he keeps about 18 or 19 clean sheets. So that means you get kind of a 50-50 chance of a clean sheet. But at the moment, it feels like with that sort of data, you've got a 60-40 chance of getting clean sheet, maybe even 65-35. So having 1 or 2 is probably going to be a really, really good idea. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to get 1 or 2 without selling Robertson, which I'm not looking at doing. So I'm probably going to be hoping that the same Crystal Palace and Villa teams that we've just derided in terms of being biscuits for KDB to break are going to be the same team who rob a goal or 2 just to make me feel better about not owning one of their players. Are you guys jumping in?
I don't own any City players at the moment, so I'm a little screwed in that regard. I think.
Have you turned to God yet, Nick?
Well, this was the thing. They had this unannounced double game week thrown at me, and it kind of, like with all these fixture changes that are happening at the moment, it's kind of threw me completely off my guard, and I've had to think urgently about how to bring in the City players, and my plan was actually to bring in De Bruyne and Diaz last week, but I ended up free hitting instead. So I think certainly one defender is going to come in for me using a little bit of that budget that I've got from replacing my forwards. Probably going to be Diaz, I think, just because I feel like he's probably the most secure of all the options in defence. I think Cancelo looks pretty exciting going forward, very attacking. There were question marks as to whether he was going to actually start, but it was Kyle Walker that was on the bench. And you know how Pep is, he could only start potentially one of those games. So there's a risk of rotation there. So I think I'm going to be safe and boring and bring in Ruben Diaz for my Manchester City defence. And it's not just about the double game week. It's worth highlighting as well for Manchester City. Obviously, great fixtures with a double, but after that, there's just so many options, so many chances for more clean sheets. West Brom, Sheffield United, Burnley. I think ideally I'd have 2 if I could, and I might even get another one in for game week 20 or game week 21 because those fixtures you just don't have better, do you? So certainly I'd highly recommend Manchester City defenders.
Yeah, all the fixture tickers would point to suggesting that City, even beyond this double game week, have the good fixtures. And I guess, given that I didn't free hit, and because City were one of the teams that were playing, I naturally ended up with triple City for the blank game week, consisting of De Bruyne, Diaz, and Cancelo. So I ended up following through on the plan that you'd initially had, Nick, and brought in De Bruyne and Diaz. So I'll obviously stick with those 3 for this double game week and just continue to hope that Cancelo continues to play. I feel like the day will come where he doesn't play. And it could easily be in the next few days, but we'll enjoy the run and we'll hope that he actually finally delivers one of those much promised attacking returns from that. I guess when you're looking at the fixtures that teams have kind of throughout the rest of the league, I think Villa are quite an interesting one because they're a team that a lot of us would have had players from. A lot of people would have Martinez. Grealish would obviously be quite a popular pick, although has found his way out of teams in the last while. So they obviously have that City game that's away, but then they're at home to Newcastle, and that was the game that was added ahead of this double game week. And I think it's that latter fixture that makes them particularly interesting because they have been in pretty decent form overall. So there's the thing is that if you've had Grealish in your side, of course he's essential. But if you don't have Grealish in your side, he's quite difficult to get back in if you've been working around the blank game week or any of the other game weeks for that matter. And that means that you've the likes of El Ghazi and Watkins are going to be of interest to people as well. I personally, if I was looking to bring another Villa player into my team to join Martinez, I think I would probably be looking to El Ghazi just because his underlying stats were so promising for weeks, and his form has obviously been quite good as well. He's been pretty much surpassing Grealish in most metrics that would be important to FPL managers in recent weeks. He's the top for shots in the whole entire league for the last 6 game weeks as well, which is pretty interesting. So he would be my pick there, although I do understand that a lot of people are probably going to be trying to fill a striker slot because of Calvert-Lewin. Watkins is as good a pick as any in there, although to be honest, I might still favour Bamford with 1 fixture over Watkins with 2.
Yeah, he's the most unlucky player in FPL, I think. I think if you can name a way to dodge points, be it being offside, being hit the crossbar, I don't know. I don't know what's happened. The goals ruled out. He's had the most shots in the box in the last 6 of any player, Watkins. And Villa in general going forward. I'm obviously confirmation biasing myself a little bit in terms of not owning City defenders here. Have been pretty damn good. As a team, they've had the most shots in the box over the last 6, 2 more than United, and 8 more than City on 65. As Anthony mentioned, Jack is far and away probably the best asset there. But you may have budgetary issues with him. He's top for big chances created and chances created over the last 6 games, and he's doing okay as well in the shooting goal threat sort of metrics as well. But it has to be El Ghazi too. I completely agree with that. He'd be one of the differentials that I'd highlight, so I'm going to kind of push that up here. But he's got more shots on target than anybody else. He's got the highest non-pen XG over the last 6 as well of any player. Really, really under the radar, just because I guess people have had Grealish, and of course Villa's fixture's not been that great. But maybe this could be a time to have a sneaky differential like that guy. Nick, where are you with Villa? Still got Martinez, of course. Do you still have Grealish in your team?
No, I sold Grealish a while back, but I'm certainly considering bringing in Ollie Watkins because, as I said, I've got to sort out my forwards. And yeah, Watkins at 6.1 million looks like the perfect fits for my team. If I can't get Grealish, I don't have space in my midfield. Watkins in the forward line looks like the perfect asset to bring in, as you highlighted. Most shots inside the box in the last 6, looking very attacking, been very, very unlucky this season. It's just ridiculous how many goals he's had, hitting crossbars, missed penalties, giving away penalties, all sorts of going on for Ollie Watkins.
Most shots in the box in the last 6. Goal conversion 0.
I know that's a little bit concerning, perhaps, but from what I've actually seen of him playing, he definitely looks like he's just been unlucky, and I can see points for him in this double game week. So he's going to be the Aston Villa player that I bring in. I've got Martinez in goal. He's going to stay there for a long time, I think, now. But otherwise, I think I'm pretty happy with 2 Aston Villa players for the double game week.
Yeah, I'm happy there too. I've still got Martinez and Grealish as mentioned. Other team as well, West Ham probably got the best double of the lot. Burnley at home and West Brom at home. I did have a hunt through the stats, and I couldn't really find very much to commend them, other than no, there's not very much here. One guy I suppose that is worth bringing up, just due to being mad value, is Big Thomas Souček. Moyes' Fellaini Mark II, the reincarnation of Morowan. 8 shots in the box in the last 6, and a massive 50% goal involvement for West Ham. Increasingly the guy they look to make that difference, especially when the clock runs down. I think he'll be the guy that I bring in and hope covers me for West Ham. But I'm guessing those teams are going to have hammers at their core, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm actually quite a big fan of Aaron Cresswell for the double game week. So he's got 6 assists, which is the most out of all the defenders in terms of actual chances created. He's actually only 5 players have actually managed more chances over the course of the season. So he's really up there in terms of the stats. He's having a bit of a great season as well. West Ham have managed 6 clean sheets, and looking at who they're playing, they're playing Burnley and West Brom, who are within the bottom 3 for goal attempts across all teams. So you could potentially see a double clean sheet in there for West Ham, perhaps even an assist for Cresswell. I think he looks like a really good pick for that double game week.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. I think Souček should be in every side at this point. He's just been returning so well, and he is so affordable, and he enables you to do so many other things that it's quite hard to come up with a compelling reason not to put him into your side, except for just not wanting to admit defeat on it. I think when you do talk about the West Ham defenders, they are actually defensively like okay, good, fine. Don't want to get too excited, but they are good. And their XGC, for example, in the last 6 is the 3rd best. That's not the 3rd worst. That's the 3rd best, just behind Liverpool and City, which is quite decent. As you point out, Aaron Cresswell is probably the defender of choice there in terms of both of his attacking output, in terms of shots and in terms of chances created too. And I just like Soufal purely because he's been in my side for so long. He's 7 chances created in the last 6, so he's tipping away with a bit of a threat there, and he's 4.7, which makes him, I guess, a nice affordable option to have in your side. And I'd fallen off West Ham's defense quite a few weeks ago, and then there've just been a few decent performances around the place that would make you that little bit more confident in them, which would mean that I think that 2 West Ham players is fine. 3, you might be getting a bit excessive there. Like a Burnley at home, West Brom at home. I don't like they could get 2 clean sheets, sure, but I think they'll conspire not to get one of them at least. But that's still pretty good for that price point, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other one I'd highlight is an old favourite of mine, Craig brackets Mike Dawson. He's now in play because Moyes doesn't fancy Diop and Balbuena is in quarantine. So he's come into the team. He scored the winner in the cup as well on the weekend. But yeah, 4.5 million. So the cheapest route into that West Ham defence, and loves a set piece attempt. Last year, he was by far and away the best defender in Project Restart in terms of attacking data. And he's done this as well in the past for West Brom. I'm looking at actually bringing him in on the double game week.
Will we cut to Jeff Shreves in the physio room to see how Mikel Antonio is doing?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. There was the rumours doing rounds today, of course, that apparently Moyes loves the look of an 18-year-old attacker, and he's going to be playing him. I don't know. With Antonio, I can see why you go there. He's obviously very, very exciting. I've had him this year, had him in years past, obviously last year with Project Restart. But his hammies are basically cheese strings at this point. Like it's very, very difficult to go there thinking with confidence that you're going to still have him in 2 or 3 weeks. This game week, I can imagine him having 90 minutes over 2 games. So he will start one, play 60 minutes, and have 30 minutes off the bench in the other one. They have just sold Haller, so maybe we may see, I don't know, he's given the chance to prove his fitness. And he was fit in the FA Cup. I think he did play the full game, but he was off the pace, did look very, very sluggish to the eye, apparently. Is he going to be able to sustain himself over 2 full throttle Premier League games? I just don't know. I don't know whether he's quite match fit yet, match sharp yet, but I can see why you take the punt. All right, and the final thing in this little area is Liverpool. There are a couple of teams as well who are doubling, like Fulham, like Chelsea, who we'll mention in a second. But Liverpool are the one that I want to just kind of talk about before we move on to differentials, because recently we have appear to have all gone cold on them. I saw people who are wildcarding, just kind of removing Salah, removing likes of Robertson as well, and just kind of saying, well, I'm not going to have Liverpool. I'm not touching them again until game week, game 22, 23, something like that. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. They still have the best attacking data in the league, and I'm still looking at having Robertson and Salah. I guess it just depends how you read the 2 games coming up in the double, doesn't it? I mean, United could either be a nervy kind of 1-1 sort of game or a full pelt game where both teams go for it. Burnley, yeah, okay, that could be a bit of a one of those where they're just under siege. But do you think people are right to be going cold on Liverpool, Nick? I mean, you're looking to captain Salah, and of course Robertson's one of your stalwarts.
Yeah, well, I think it's just more the fact that Manchester City just have these excellent fixtures. Manchester United are playing really well as well. It's kind of like we're just kind of forgetting a little bit about Liverpool. They're kind of floating a little bit under the radar. But I think certainly if you own Liverpool players, I would not recommend selling them. The likes of Robertson, you mentioned that you were thinking about selling him at one point. I just wouldn't do it. I think he's worth holding for the double game week. Obviously, the Manchester United game could be a tough one, but then they've got Burnley at home. He could easily haul in that game, get a clean sheet, and assist, and a few bonus, and you're laughing. And in terms of the underlying stats, he is the defender still to own. I think out of all the defenders in the game, if you forget about price, I think he's the best defender in FPL. He's created 32 chances, which is the most out of all defenders. 7 big chances created as well, which is the most. And he's picked up 5 assists for his troubles. And he's a bit of a bonus hog as well. So I definitely recommend keeping Robertson, and just holding him for now. Wouldn't sell him and take a hit to sell him. It'd be daft, especially when considering they have a double. Mo Salah, again, if you own him, I'd definitely keep him. I think you'd be absolutely crazy to think about transferring him out for De Bruyne or anything like that. So definitely hold for me with the Liverpool assets.
Yeah, I guess I would pretty much be the exact same as you on that, Nick. Like, I think Liverpool's brilliance has become like wallpaper at this point. It's just not worth talking about, and that means that we do tend to forget them at times. Robertson, of course, probably the premier choice there in defence, but actually Alexander-Arnold has slowly but surely, his underlying stats have been catching up with Robertson. He hasn't quite overtaken him yet, but he is 0.1 cheaper, and which might make the difference to somebody if you were trying to decide which of the Liverpool defenders you were considering bringing into your side. And then Salah, okay, yeah, there has been a fall, as Tom noted earlier in the pod, in his non-pen XG this season. And I guess there has just been a fall in Liverpool's excitement, we'll say, generally. But at the same time, these are two fixtures that they could do well in. I think defensively, especially, I wouldn't have anything to fear for Liverpool for quite some time. Like, they have quite a lot of fixtures where you could see them getting a clean sheet, and that includes in this double game week. So the United game, Liverpool United matches have in recent history just very much petered out into fairly boring nil-nils an awful lot of the time, and you could see a clean sheet there. Burnley, ditto. They're playing against Jose Mourinho's Tottenham in game week 20. Like, they don't attack, so that's just fine. Then you've got West Ham. Okay, they're a good team, but you could still see Liverpool getting a clean sheet there. And then you've got Brighton, all fart, no poo, no conversion. So with that in mind, you're seeing that there's a good run there for the Liverpool defenders, just like the City ones. Obviously not as good as the City ones, and obviously the City defense has been more reliable and looks better on underlying stats this year and hasn't been injury ridden like Liverpool's one. But at the same time, Liverpool's defense has, season after season, organizationally managed to find a way to keep clean sheets even through injury crises, and even this season has done to a lesser extent, but probably will keep more of them as things start to slow up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm happy with Robertson and Salah. I'll discuss later on. Nick mentioned I was thinking of selling him. I've been talking about this week a little bit in our little group, but I think I'm probably going to keep him just because I don't want to be moving on a doubler to another doubler. That just feels a bit too risky for my blood. Let's move on to differentials then as a fun little bit here. If people have asked players to be looking at around this sort of area. So I guess let's nominate a few. I'm going to start us off with one man, Jared Bowen, just because he's 3.4% owned. He's got 2 home games. Most people will be jumping on Souček for obvious reasons, £1 million more expensive than that guy. But as I said, 15% owned Souček, 3.4% owned Bowen, and astonishing stat, 66% of all of his returns this season have come at home. He's got 6 returns, 4 of them have come at home, but that's the sort of thing you'll see on FPL Twitter. And he could well be one of those players who could elicit unique points compared to everyone else piles onto one particular individual. What do you guys reckon as another differential?
There's a few assets out there. Obviously Jamie Vardy's attracting a lot of attention, but I also think Timo Werner might be quite an interesting differential if you're fancying a bit of a punt. With one of the Chelsea guys, it's 9.2 million. So he's very expensive, but he's been statting pretty well over the course of the season, and certainly has been unlucky to have scored as few goals as he has so far. But I think he's starting to see in his last performances in the cup as well. He's gaining a little bit of confidence at least, so that's really reassuring to see. I think in terms of over the course of the season, he's 5th for goal attempts across all forwards, but he's only actually managed 4 goals, so that is a little bit of a concern. But yeah, we all talked about how brilliant he was last season when he was at Leipzig, and I think you could even punt like on some of the midfielders, like Mason Mount could be a really interesting punt, only 6.8 million perhaps. Otherwise, I mentioned Leicester as well, got the likes of Harvey Barnes, statted excellently over the course of the season, but you've also got players like James Maddison at 7.1 million, who's put in some decent performances in recent weeks, been very much off the radar over the course of the season, but has actually now managed 4 goals and 4 assists and starting to show some real form. So he could be a decent differential. And also Pogba, I thought he looks really good in that midweek game. He's only 7.7 million. He's got a goal and an assist in the last 2. Looks to be nailed on for Manchester United. So these are very much differentials. But I think, if you're fancying a bit of a punt, considering all these players have double game weeks, why not for 1 week perhaps?
Yeah, I've literally written down Chelsea and ringed it as a differential because I've completely forgot, to be honest, until I did a little bit of work on this pod, that they had a double game week, and then I looked into their players and probably forgot again because there's nothing really of note. Maybe the fact that Mount's created the 5th most chances over the last 6, Maddison's actually created the 6th as well, and maybe the fact that Pulisic is back playing as well. I mean, these are kind of players who are right on the fringes, but players who could well be of interest. Similarly, Reece James, I believe, is back. Who could be a nice little cut price route into a Chelsea defence if you're interested. And there's always the perennial Ben Chilwell, who I'm sure is still in many, many squads. He's still got decent ownership. Anthony?
Yeah, I think of those Chelsea assets, Chilwell is definitely the one that's most worth talking about. I noted earlier that Chelsea's defence has slowed down a bit, but at the same time, he, the decent enough fixtures there with Fulham away and Leicester away, especially in the first of those. You'd be hopeful that they could get a clean sheet, even if they've been struggling to keep them of late. I'm stretching the word differential by pointing to Jamie Vardy as a differential, but just looking at the Twitter sphere, he isn't actually in that many teams right now, and I think you should probably be looking to get him into your side, probably as a differential in mini leagues, which include a lot of active FPL community managers, at least, if not a differential in the overall game. After that, though, the differentials would tend to come from the weaker sides, and the weaker sides are the likes of Burnley, Fulham, Newcastle, West Brom, who have double game weeks, and they all have pretty difficult fixtures there. You could say West Brom's fixtures aren't too bad, but West Brom are bad, which means that you wouldn't be all that interested in them. And so really the differentials may well be the single game week players here. And I won't obviously point to Kane and Son, but I would point to the likes of Patrick Bamford, who I think is going to be disappearing from sides, certainly won't be in free hit sides this week if there are a few people doing that. And I think he will be quite good against Brighton. As long as that game goes ahead, there's talk of snow and ice warnings and things in the north of England, but just forget about that. They'll probably move it to Monday if they have to. But he would be the most interesting choice of those, aside from, your classic Leeds players, the likes of Dallas or whatever, but I wouldn't call him a differential even if you tried.
No. All right. Okay, great. Let's actually stick with single game weekers and kind of segue smoothly into the Q&A, because selling singlers is obviously on the agenda for a lot of people. Rishi FPL Raccoon asks if selling Son for KDB is the right move, the move I'm looking at. And FPL Doctor asks if asked something similar. Asked if selling Kane to finance double game week friendly players effectively is a good idea. I guess most people are going to be staring this in the face, because obviously one of the logical ways, unless you do have a magic money tree, or you've got a player missing like Salah or Fernandez, who's in many other squads, the way to get to the City players, like of KDB, is through selling the Spurs players. I don't know. I'm selling some for Kevin De Bruyne again for the second time this season. This time it's not going to hurt me. I'm sure. No, I'm sure it will find a way to screw me. One thing with Son and Kane is that their EO is often so high. In fact, in a lot of weeks it's over 100%. So it's not effective owning them unless you have plans to captain them. I don't have any plan to captain them until game week 23, which is the West Brom game, or maybe 21 against Brighton. So it feels the case here that where I am in terms of rank, where I'm not looking to consolidate, I'm looking to climb, the optimal strategy is to simply tap out completely and rely on other assets like Kevin De Bruyne to make a difference to my rank. So I'm going to be selling Son for De Bruyne and captaining De Bruyne. And I think that's quite a logical thing to do. I'm sure that Son will go ahead and score 5 against Sheffield United, and De Bruyne will play 5 minutes against Crystal Palace and blank against Villa. Them's the breaks. You've got to sometimes make that sort of gambit. Anthony, what about you? What do you think about selling those sort of singlers? I think in this term we are really zeroing in on Kane and Son, aren't we?
I think we are too. Yeah, I think that's, a lot of people are using one free transfer, I think, or 2 free transfers, with a hit involved perhaps, or just 2 free transfers. They're probably considering selling one of those Spurs players to fill a gap in their side with one of those premiums that you speak about. And I think the reason why Son is the one that people are looking to, and just we didn't touch on it there, is the fact that, Kane occupies a premium slot in the forwards, but who are you going to bring in? Vardy, yeah, but that's it. That's your other option there. But longer term, do you want to be going without Kane, with Vardy? That's the other question there. Whereas with selling Son, there's KDB, there's Salah, and there is Bruno Fernandes, who of course the yellow card and everything, but still you would want those players in your side for a double game week. And that's why I think it makes sense to sell Son and not Kane specifically for this double game week. And I think then going forward, you have the penalty play taker there. You've got the top score. You've got the, let's say, the talismanic figure historically there. And I think you've got the player that's more important to Spurs' side overall there if you've got Kane, in spite of the fact that Son has been probably the best player in the league so far this season.
Logistically, it makes sense to sell Son for De Bruyne for this particular week if you don't own De Bruyne, and Son is the main fall guy because you're not going to be selling like Salah or Fernandes, are you? So, yeah, with agreed. Just unfortunately, it just doesn't work for my team because of the amount of hits that it would mean I'd have to take, considering my forward line is already utterly trashed. and I'd have to find an extra 2.1 million because it's not a straight swap. De Bruyne is very, very expensive. He's 11.6 million. So, I'm certainly going to be in the 11.8 million even. So I'm certainly going to be in the minority here without this guy for the double game week. But I just don't really have a strategy or way of getting him in because I've got too many other fires to sort out in my team ultimately.
Yeah, for the audience, this is your cue not to sell Spurs players. If Nick's holding on to them, they're about to go big, just as everyone sells.
Yeah, no, definitely. In fact, actually, we should zero out actually from the Spurs players into other singlers and perhaps unexpected players of a single game week, because triple leads is also one of those things that has been asked of us to speak about, because people have said, my plans have been thrown out the window by those fixture changes that have happened recently. For example, Michael Lowe asked if triple leads is still worth the bench boost, or is holding the chips now better? So a lot of people, including myself, including Nick, didn't have City players and had triple leads or double leads, expecting the double game weeks to look one way, and then suddenly everything turned on a knife edge, and suddenly our teams look a bit crap. We could be taking some hits to sort them out. So triple leads, a lot of people have got that on their bench, ready to go, had that ready to go for double game week, and we're looking at bench boosting. And I've seen a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm still going to follow through with it. I had a conversation with a few people on Twitter the other day, and it kind of feels a bit like, it obviously depends on your team. I'm sure if a lot of teams do look great. Leeds versus Brighton on paper is a great fixture, yes. But I think just be mindful about the fact that that single game week seems to be being built up to being, the best thing since sliced bread, that Brighton are going to be caving in and letting Leeds score 7 or 8 goals. Everyone's going to be happy, and that one game will cover a double. I'm mindful of sunk cost fallacy here as well. I've committed to my plans. I've got to carry it through. You don't have to use the bench boost this week, even if you've been planning to do it. Don't get caught up in getting it out of the way being a thing. It's early enough in the season that there are other opportunities to use it. It's double game week 26, double game week 37, perhaps, if that happens. And I know there's double game week in front of us, but just because it's in the present doesn't mean that it's the only time you can use it. There's also a raft of fixture postponements, which means there's lots of kind of random double game weeks to come. You've got your wild cards, perhaps, or free hits, some other way that you can build into making your bench boost work wherever else in the season. I know people are also saying, oh, yeah, but European stuff is going to kick in then. But to be honest, the European stuff only affects your big players anyway. And what's interesting or important about the bench boost is the little guys as a support cast who come from clubs like West Ham, like Leeds, who don't have European concerns. So that's a bit of a false red herring argument in my view. So basically, if your team does look good for a bench boost, do it. But if you are of the mindset that, I've committed to my plan, I've got to go for it, I'm getting out of the way, I think again about that, just because it might be a bit of a waste of a chip, and you may have a better opportunity further down the road. Anthony, what do you reckon here?
See, this is the thing, Tom, is that getting that better opportunity is going to be quite hard for an awful lot of people. And if you've built towards this point, and if you are able to say hand on heart, trying to shore yourself of all biases, that your Leeds trio are your worst 3 players, then you've got a pretty balanced squad, and this might be as good a time as any to bench boost. Like the Brighton fixture it's a perfectly serviceable fixture for a team which tends to do all right against that sort of team towards the bottom end of the table. It could conceivably be a confident 1 or 2 or 3-0 win. It could also be some sort of ludicrous 3-2 where they become their own worst enemy for a period in defense. I would say that the former is more likely, and that it could be a good day. But the problem is that you'd have to look through the rest of your side. Like, for example, do you have the Mitchells and Brewsters also in your team? Do you have like other deadwood that you wouldn't necessarily want? If you do, or do you have quite a lot of double game week players that you're content with? You're not just making this your bench boost week just for the sake of it, even though you're not happy with, let's say, the rest of your side, and you're just kind of trying to concoct the situation. If that's what you're trying to do, then this isn't the week to bench boost. But at the same time, Tom kind of brushed aside the idea of the European fixtures. I think they're going to continue to cause greater uncertainty. COVID isn't going to stop causing uncertainty for a while, at least it looks like. And so with that in mind, if you think that you can get to 15 now, this might be as good a time as any, unless you have wildcards and things to set you up for potential double game weeks later where rotation or goodness knows what might affect you. So if you feel like you have the information and you're happy with it, I would say go for it.
I think ultimately, if you're looking at your side and you're thinking actually Leeds aside, my team is really strong, then probably is a good idea to still bench boost. Because if you're thinking about having the Leeds guys sitting on the bench, you've got 3 Leeds men all on the bench, then go ahead and use it. Because especially if that was your plan all along, that you'd left your wild card until the last minute and prepped for this double game week with the idea of having sort of 15 double game weekers. You've got your reserve goalkeeper there ready with his double game week, then I think go for it. Obviously, it's very unfortunate for managers that targeted the double game week to have fixtures cancelled, but you can still rectify it here. -4 here or there, -8 would sort out your bench essentially, but with free transfers and get 15 double game weekers in again if you need to. So I would probably say if that was your original plan that you'd set up, that you'd planned for the double game week to bench boost, then you can still do it, certainly, especially with sort of new announcements of new double game weeks coming in. And with all the uncertainty, to be honest, I'm not sure if there's going to be a better opportunity later on in the season. You might prep your next wild card for another bench boost, but things could easily hit the fan then as well. The fixtures might not line up in the same way as your team is currently. So I don't think people who are planning on bench boosting should quit at this moment in time.
Yeah, and maybe just to tag on as well, maybe if you do still have your wild card and you are potentially considering this bench boost situation, I think what you need to think about is the type of compromises that you would have to make on your wild card in 5-10 game weeks time, where you wouldn't be able to put your dud, Brewster, Mitchell type characters into your side because you're trying to factor in putting together a team of 15 to bench boost. It's going to be very hard to then kind of reconcile that, and maybe the compromises you make then and the hits that you take to fix that afterwards to set yourself up for that, say, the run into the season might just be so big that it might be just easier to almost get the bench boost chip out of the way. And I know it's awful to reduce a chip to that, but as we've kind of definitely drawn out at this point, when you have the information, you're pretty content with your side, I would go for it.
Yeah, no, it certainly makes sense. I've seen that argument everywhere. It's just at the end of the day, you're making out like we don't do this every season anyway. I know the season's a bit of a different season, and there are always going to be these kind of clear things to bear in mind. But we do that every year, where we do kind of find ways to enable stuff, be it through playing an unfortunate single game week like a Mitchell type or a Wan-Bissaka type in the past, it was at Palace, or through finding other ways to get a decent team out. At the end of the day, it's just a thought of mine that I did see a lot of people kind of saying, I've just got to go for it no matter what. And I kind of just thought, oh, really? I mean, maybe think about that a little bit more, just to kind of provide a counterpoint. Of course, I accept that if your team's looking good, go for it. And the final thing this week is how many hits would you take for a double? So Sean McCall asked about the bench boost and how many hits are justifiable for that. But let's widen that to just a double game week in general. How many hits are willing to take? This leads us into transfers and captains as well. And I think it is just one of those weeks where we are going to be seeing hits flying everywhere, isn't it? Nick, you mentioned a little bit earlier about what you're looking to do. What level are you looking to go for? -8 is the threshold, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a -8 for me. I'm not sure I really want to do a -12 and certainly not a -16. So it's going to be a -8. I think it's worth highlighting that when you're taking hits to bring out single game weekers, to bring in double game weekers, it's not really a -4. It's more of a -2 ultimately, because you're getting those extra appearance points from the guy you're bringing in. So kind of like a -2 really, if you kind of think about it that way. So I'm going to do a -8, I think, because my team needs some serious surgery. But that probably is my threshold. But I think if you're considering things like -12s, it could be worth it if you really want to sort out your team and load up on those double game weekers. It's a good opportunity as ever to sort it out.
Yeah, I think I would say that -8 is realistically that's as big of a number of hits as you should need to take. I think you're really chasing kind of theoretical points at that point to try and justify it, unless you've got like some sort of like multi-week strategy planned out where you could kind of consider the points hits diluted even further than they already are through the double game week itself. For me personally, with my own side, it looks like I'll be taking a -4 this week. Part of that will be to basically raise funds to move Son to Salah. And Calvert-Lewin, who is injured, will obviously be the fall guy to do that. Bamford is probably the one who I'm looking at bringing in, although I'm juggling with the idea of Watkins as well, even just to cover. But I feel like I'm starting to just cover all over the place at that point. And I've actually not owned Bamford all this season, and I quite like him against Brighton, and I do like that Newcastle fixture. And to be honest, just in general, he's just continued to hurt me so much this season. He's like this year's Ings, that I feel like I want to get him in.
Oh, okay, interesting. Agree on that -8 being the threshold. I agree with Nick's reasoning as well, -2. So it definitely does make sense to me. I'm looking at basically my rule this week is that I don't want to be selling double game week players for other double game week players. So as mentioned with Robertson, he would be a nice patsy to get the likes of Cancelo or Diaz or Stones in. I just don't like the look of that because it's likely to be a hit. Let's face it, KDB is my target. I've got to get him in, I think. So anything on top of that, I'm reasoning that I keep the player and I keep 4 points versus I replace him with another player and I lose 4 points. Is that going to work? Am I going to see a profit from that move? I'm not sure selling Robertson for Cancelo Diaz is going to do that. I will be taking that hit though to compensate for the changing landscape. So like Nick, I didn't have any Man City players, and I wish I didn't have to, but I've got to do what I deem is necessary here. So Son to Kevin De Bruyne, I'm going to do that. Rafinha, who was in because of the Leeds double game week over Souček, is going to be moved to Souček. And the other thing I'm looking at is Alioski to Dawson because I can afford it. I'm hoping that there'll be a -2 sort of logic to that. Obviously, that is the Brighton game, but with the return of Llorente, I'm told that perhaps Alioski may not have long in that team. So, yeah, interesting one this week. It sounds like we're all pretty set, barring any last-minute devastation tomorrow. God, you can just imagine Pep coming out and saying, "Oh, he was just too pink. I can't play De Bruyne anymore." But we will see.
That is the mark of a great player, the pink.
This guy
what does it mean?
this guy's got an incredible mentality. He's an incredible asset to the team. Fantastic to have around the squad. But will he start Pep? He's got an incredible mentality. It's fantastic to have him around the team. He will just do what I tell him. He's fantastic.
What he does on the pitch, no player can do. Bench.
Absolutely. It's just a rule of Pep. So basically heard what our transfers are earlier on, and our captains are, as we said, at the very top, but Anthony and I are both looking at KDB, and Nick is looking at default to Salah, and it looks like none of us can be using a chip. I'm considering using triple captain chip, but we shall see. I think that's your lot for this week.
Cool. Yep. We were Who Got the Assist. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already.
Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll be back at some point just after this extremely long game week that's coming up ends, probably recording on the weekend and getting something out to you guys over that weekend of January 23rd, 24th. You can expect something around then, probably becoming clear through Tom tweeting at some point over the next few weeks, next 5 days or so. Until then, thanks so much for tuning in, and we look forward to picking over the ruins of the double game week with you then.
Cool. I hope it's just you ahead of double game week, but we'll speak to you next week then. All the best for that big double. Bye.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?